Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel to 21 Hunting and Fishing. And I want to talk to you today about applying lessons learned from the Marines to hunting and fishing. So I noticed that there's a lot of similarities between hunting and fishing and being in the military and the way you get good at either one of those three things. And so I thought it'd be cool to put together a video kind of explaining the similarities that I've seen. And this is according to me. I'm sure there are other things. And if there's some other topics that I've missed, please feel free to comment. And I hope you enjoy this video. And if you're enjoying this content, please like and subscribe. I don't know if there's a video like this somewhere on the internet, on the YouTube. I'm sure there is. I doubt I'm the first guy to think of this. I highly doubt this. But again, these are just things that I have seen to be similar between essentially all three of those things. So I have 8 reasons. I've added some photos. These photos are from some of the earlier training in my career because that's just what I found as I was looking for this. Again, I don't spend tons of time on these videos. I'm sure you can tell. So uh, here we go. The first thing that you can see some similarities between in skills is land navigation. If you're heading heading out to the field, to the woods, or even on out into the ocean, you need to be able to figure out how to get yourself safely from point A to point B. I made a 4-part series on this topic. Land navigation is something that they drill into your head in the Marines and at the basic school TBS, where they send all the newly minted lieutenants. They claimed it was one of the most thorough land navigation courses in the world. It was pretty thorough. That's a pretty bold statement. But when it comes down to it, you don't need to be a land navigation wizard. You just need to be able to confidently walk around the woods and figure out how you need to get to where you want to go. Season after season, year after year, people are constantly getting lost in the woods, and the wardens have to go find them. And I'm sure these folks are highly skilled outdoorsmen, but man, you can get turned around out there pretty quickly. And one thing about being lost in the woods is you will start to panic. And when you start to panic, you start to make irrational decisions. One thing that I have heard that it seems to make sense is that if you do get lost in the woods, is to stay put. Why do that? Well, because if you're lost in the woods, first, who knows when you're gonna get out? So if you are running around, you're probably moving kind of faster than you normally would because your heart rate's up. You're gonna start losing, burning calories, right? And we don't know when you're gonna eat again. You're gonna start sweating. Sweating can be deadly. Why? Because when that sun goes down and your clothes are wet, you are more susceptible to hypothermia. And you can't always just drink the water in all the streams, lakes, rivers, or whatever that you come across because there could be different bacteria in it. It could look clear as the sky, but there could be a dead animal somewhere upstream, and washing bacteria and things down downstream. So have a compass with you. On the 4-part series that I made, I talked about having an escape azimuth. An escape azimuth is a direction that you can go that eventually is going to lead you to some major landmark that you really can't miss. Maybe it's a river, maybe it's a road, and that could be the difference between spending the night in the woods or something worse to, just getting home that night. I'll give you a quick example. So in November, when I shot a deer, which unfortunately we never found, but we did track it with a dog, which was pretty amazing to see. There's probably, well, there's not probably, there is a whole bunch of videos on YouTube about the relatively new thing, I would say, at least in Maine, of tracking a wounded animal with a dog. And watching this dog work was unbelievable. It reminded me when I went duck hunting, and having a dog that's well trained is it's night and day. And anyways, what's the point? The point is you are you got to follow this wounded animal to wherever it goes. And in this case, it took us to places in the woods that I have never been to. I was I can say I'm extremely familiar with the woods that I was in when I shot the deer, but we went on for a mile and a half trying to find this deer. And you are paying attention to the ground, you're looking for blood, you're following the dog. Next thing you know, you are tired because this dog can just go through the woods like unbelievably fast. You're trying to keep up with the dog. You don't want to limit the dog speed, right? You're excited, you're nervous. Did you shoot it? Did you not? So all these sort of things are going through your mind. What's not going through your mind is where am I going and when am I going to be there and how do I get back? And luckily, I had my phone with me and we generally knew what direction we needed to take to get back. So I used the compass app on my phone and we also had OnX going. So I can tell you exactly we went about a mile and a half one way. So then we had to do about a mile and a half to get back, maybe a little bit shorter because we went a little bit more of a straight line. But I was super tired. I was really dehydrated. This is probably like the hardest physical exertion. I would say second to catching a thresher shark that was 120 pounds that kicked my butt. This was the most physical exertion that I ever did while I was hunting. And now you still have to apply this skill under all those circumstances. So you really need to know where you are and not rely on all your electronics. Like it's great to have electronics. I support the use of them, of course. You know, technology has made a lot of the things that used to be difficult a lot more easy. But the pitfall is if you start to rely on them and you don't know how to use a compass, what are you going to do when you drop your phone in the stream and now it's broken so you don't have that compass? What are you going to do when your batteries run out? You really need to understand land navigation. There's some more topics about land navigation I could do. I only did 4 because I didn't really want to overwhelm folks with information because when it comes down to it, you just need a few simple skills, but it's also just a really good skill to have. So, how does some things I learned in the Marines apply to hunting and fishing? The first thing is land nav. Not only can it get you out of a unsafe or sticky situation, you need to somehow get to where you want to go, even under normal circumstances. So I would say Google Earth and Google Maps is probably the single easiest, most accessible, and helpful tool to use. Um, I talked about a website called Hog View, HAWG, TACview.com, that uses the McGurk's reference system, which to me is just easy to use. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, throwing no acronyms, go watch my 4-part series on land navigation. Okay, the second thing is setting in your rifle or bow. Whatever weapon you plan on using in the field, you have to have extreme confidence that that thing is going to shoot and that projectile is going to go where you think it's going to go. We did this all the time in the military. You learn how to sight in iron sights, so that's no optics. That's that's fun to do. I honestly have shot better with iron sights than with optics. And here's my theory on why that is. I believe, and maybe you have another theory, but I believe that when you are shooting a rifle with iron sights, you think and care and apply more of the fundamentals of shooting to make up for the fact that you don't have an optic. When you have an optic and you see a target, and that crosshairs are, in the case of the M4 service rifle, the M16 with the ACOG, that little red triangle is exactly on your target. You can get kind of overly excited and start shooting and forget your fundamentals. I would say keep that in mind. Okay, so I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but you have to understand um, what the clicks are. Each click on your optic, how far that moves that bullet in a lateral or vertical distance per. It's usually something easy like 100 yards or something like that. I can tell you the first time I screwed this up. So excuse me, not feeling that great. One of the first times I was sighting in an ACOG, and you get the target that it's a grid, right? It looks like that graph paper that you would get in high school algebra class, and it said if your grouping is over here, then you need to do 20 clicks to get it towards the bullseye. Well, I thought a click was a complete rotation because I'm an idiot and I missed that detail. And so it moved my aiming point like way off the paper, and I didn't realize just how fine adjustment you made. It's like a little click click, and of course, I'm sure there are copious. I'm not sure. I know that there are thousands of more people who know way more about this type of stuff than me. But again, some of these just kind of simple skills are really what you need to be able to hunt confidently. I'll give you an example and then I'll show you a picture. When we went moose hunting, moose hunting, like I talked about in that video, could be a once in a lifetime opportunity. You could live your entire life and never have the chance to pull the trigger on the majestic moose. So you need to make sure that you take care of everything. Everything matters. So when we got to moose camp, what we did is, excuse me, we resighted in our rifles. Depending on the quality of scope you have, it may not just lose its zero to vibrations in the car. If you're flying with your rifle, maybe you hit turbulence. All these different factors, but you need to be able to send some rounds downrange and be confident that though they're going exactly where you think they're going. You also need to understand the trajectory of your bullet. So bullets typically when they leave the end of the muzzle, they rise and then they fall. And then depending on the weight of the bullet, the speed, the caliber, all this stuff, it starts to fall at a faster and faster rate. I remember my high school physics teacher doing this demonstration where he had two ball bearings, and one ball bearing just dropped vertically to the floor, whereas the other ball bearing shot out horizontally, and they both hit the floor at the same time. So let me say it again. The ball bearing that was dropped vertically and the ball bearing that was shot horizontally, they fell at the same rate and hit the floor at the same time. You need to keep that in mind. Your round is hitting the ground very, very fast because it's falling in a vertical direction as it's moving horizontally. So understanding that trajectory of the bullet is key. Here's just a photo. This is when we got to Al Assad after, traveling from Camp Lejeune to Cherry Point. You get on a commercial plane, which is always fun when you have your rifles. Of course, there's no civilians on it. The government charters these planes. They fly you to some third party country. You get off, and then you get on a military plane, and then that was in Kuwait. So then from Kuwait, you fly into Iraq, and you're shoved into a C-130 or C-5 or something like that, like sardines, super uncomfortable. You're bouncing around, you can't see out. And anyways, the point is your rifle is going through all this as well as your ACOG. So when you get to country, you BZO. What is BZO? That's battle site zero. So at what was it? 50 yards, that bullet is going exactly where your crosshairs are. Now that bullet rises and then it crosses that horizontal plane again, and that's say at 200 yards. So at 50 yards and at 200 yards, that bullet is exactly at the same vertical height. In between those 2 points in space and time is either higher than that by however many inches, or it's lower than that by however many inches. And obviously, we're not talking about windage here, so that's what the wind does to your bullet as it flies through the air in a horizontal way. But the point is, you're going to have to bring some rounds with you to burn just to make sure your rifle is shooting straight. Depending on where your ammo comes from, the factories, lots, blah, blah, blah. There could be even some variances in that, but for the average guy, I mean, if you're starting to worry about that type of thing, you are probably shooting way far and worrying about such things. So this was cool. They bust you out. You just shoot some rounds down range, make sure you're good, and then you put your rifle away until you need it. We were hoping that some enemy would come up over that cliff, but they never did. That would have been all right. Number three, taking care of your gear. In the military, we had a thing. We would always say weapons, gear, people. So when you came back from a field op, you were you were either hot, you were either cold, you were wet, you were sick, you were dirty, and it was so tempting just to throw your stuff in the corner of your room or wherever you are and take care of yourself. But first thing you did is you go to the armory and you clean your weapon. You take care of that thing because it could be the difference between you living and dying and getting a jammed round or not. The second thing you took care of was your gear. All your other gear, starting probably with your comm equipment, your whatever optics you might have, NVGs, that type of stuff. So other gear that we would call it serialized gear, so like important gear. And then you would, you know, take care of all your clothes and that type of thing, and whatever else that you needed to, uh, just kind of survive and be comfortable in whatever environment you're in. And the last thing is people. Then you take care of your body. Then you clean your toes, you clean your butt, you clean your face, you wash yourself. Um, and here's the funny thing: like once you get so dirty, you kind of just stop feeling that way. I think the longest I ever went without a shower was 3 weeks, and that was just in a training environment. We always would try to make our lives I say we, but the Marine Corps would always try to make your lives like really crappy in garrison. But then you go overseas, and because there's just all this money falling from the sky during these times, like you can actually live kind of comfortably, depending on where you are, showers and stuff. But anyways, for brag trading, yeah, we would go there twice a year, do Operation Rolling Thunder, and just when I was with the artillery guys, and they would do their thing, and we would just sit around supporting them. But anyways, what's the point? The point is you take care of your body last. Now, that doesn't mean you neglect it, right? You have to make sure you are clean because the littlest cuts, scrapes, bruises, things like that can start to get infected. Sometimes when we're fishing and grabbing fish and you're on the boat for 2.5, 3 days, those fish can have little spikes in their fins and things like that and can poke you, and it doesn't feel bad at first, but then all of a sudden it starts to hurt because they have bacteria, and then it's the point is it's different than being at home where you're not exposed to this type of bacteria and all these other germs. Same thing. Hunting, when you're in the woods, you get dirty. Uh, you do have to clean yourself, but prioritize taking care of your gear. Example, I would say, was duck hunting. You know, if you're duck hunting, you may be in a place where there's brackish or salty water, and that will rust out your nice shotgun faster than anything else probably on the planet. I mean, get that stuff home, clean it off, but also before you go to the field, we would use, uh, and that's what I use on what I would recommend on guns is CLP, cleaning lubricant and protectant. It's good in pretty much any temperature that you would ever be in. If you're in Arctic type environments, you use something else. But the point is, put a very liberal layer of that on your, I guess in this case, shotgun, and that will help keep the salt, clean it, and your gun will last forever. Another example is, just organize and store your gear properly. Clean it, dry it, and it'll last a very long time. Don't put your stuff away wet. And I always try to do this. I always try to rinse my poles off, especially if there's salt on them. Um, I failed to do this the other day. I went surf fishing and I forgot my waders in the back of my car, and they just kind of sat there drying a little bit, but not to the rate or the effectiveness that I should have gone for. So here's a picture of, this is not me. I just did this, Rebelling Evolution. This is the guy that went after me. But at Mountain Warfare, they give you a bunch of gear. You got to take care of it because at the end of the day, your life is literally on the line depending on how well you took care of your gear. Inspect it for serviceability, all that good stuff. Kind of a fun thing I learned during this training is how to make a Swiss seat. Now, I don't know if I would be able to bust one out right now, but basically, they gave everyone this, I would say, like 12-foot, 15-foot piece of rope, and you use that piece of rope for more things than you can imagine. And one of them is you would make what they call a Swiss seat. What's a Swiss seat? A Swiss seat is like one of those rock climbing harnesses that you would see at like REI or just, homies at the rock gym. You would tie one up, and then you would take your carabiner and clip it basically right where your junk's at, and then rappel down. So you damn well made sure that you knew how to tie this thing because if it came untied or what have you, it's a long ways down, and that stupid little helmet is not going to do much for you. So, point is, all that important gear, you need to keep your eyes on it, and it'll serve you well. You did this at night as well. without NVGs. But honestly, I think sometimes NVGs are overrated. That's probably another podcast. All right, what's gather information and make a plan before heading to the field. This one maybe sounds self-explanatory, but I mean, we had entire shops in the military, the S2 shop, the intelligence shops, doing this, gathering information and giving it and sharing it. So every time, during, I say every time, but 90% of any story I have is during a training environment. You would always know what the enemy's MPCO is. We call it MPCO, or enemy's most probable course of action. Like, what is the enemy most likely to do? You had to have that in your mind because why not? You need to know what your adversary is doing. Information is powerful. And what they did yesterday could be completely different from what they did today. Where the fish were biting yesterday could be completely different from where they're going to bite today or tomorrow, or maybe it's exactly the same. But the point is, know the conditions, right? Um, another example is in the fishing community, you have what you call code groups, where you have a group of guys who will freely share information amongst each other and tell you where their fish are at, and that helps you make a plan before heading to the field. Here's just a photo training at 29 Palms. We did a lot of basically convoy training, and they give you these scenarios, and you always need to understand what's likely to happen, right? So probably at the highest level example that most people would recognize is IEDs, right? Like the enemy was overseas, was basically terrorizing and fighting coalition forces via improvised explosive devices. So we were always prepared for that. Up armored Humvees, you could kind of see in behind all these motivated Marines. This was the last major training exercise I ever did, and it was really cool. So my CO was like, "Hey, Carter, take headquarters platoon." This is when I was with Anglico, which is a pretty cool unit. Take headquarters platoon and go to 29 Palms at one of the CAXs, combined arms exercise, Mojave Viper, whatever you want to call it. Somehow he knew that there was going to be these like training opportunities available at this particular CAX, and I just he just kind of sent me, and I just kind of planned it. Um, like all this stuff is like very official. Like there's money set aside for these training units to go do this, and there's ammo budgets. So you you typically can't just show up and start training at these places. It's not how it works. But I just kind of worked my way into it. I went to like a 90-day planning conference, and people are like, "Who are you? Why are you here?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're going to be doing the convoy package." And like, "Oh, okay." And um, God, it was weird. Like I don't. Then like once the way the military works, like once you get your unit name on some sort of piece of paperwork, now all this like money starts falling from the sky. And like we weren't deploying. The way Anglico deploys, they deploy in with when I was there with the Muse, they would send out these. I think they call them salt teams. The headquarters never really deployed. You just supported all the uh, platoons training, and then they would attach to Muse and go out and do great things, go forth and conquer, and then come back. But we were able to get out there. You get out there, drop vehicles from the motor pool and all this stuff. But the point is, the convoy commanders, they always had to have a plan on what they were going to do, what they're going to do if a certain thing happened. Probably one of the coolest things is at the end when it kind of was like a culminating experience exercise. I was on this hill watching everything happen, and they have all these pyrotechnics going on, blah blah blah. And the convoy commander calls in a medevac, and two Ospreys come flying in. You're really talking to the pilots. I'm not. The lieutenants were. I was a captain. Um, you can see me in the right with the mass sergeant. I don't need my weapon. I don't need my flak jacket. I got all these guys around me that are more than happy to do that type of work. Um, I was more just there to help plan and orchestrate. But anyways, coolest thing is these ospreys come in hot and heavy. They land. You actually put the guy on the bird, and then they fly off. And I can't remember if they like once indexed over, if they like land again, just drop the guy off, or if they actually like bring him back to Camp Wilson and blah blah. Pretty crazy, pretty crazy place. Um, Man, I have more stories about 29 Palms, but we'll skip them for now. Maybe this is the same thing. Train and prepare. Again, about 90% of any story that I have in the military is about training and preparing. It's all you do. And, um, you know, a lot of this kind of means like just be prepared on how to use your equipment. Like if you have a GPS, like do you know how to use it? Just go outside, start plotting uh, points, even if you know how to get there, and just like walk to it, see what your GPS does. A lot of these electronics are made to be pretty user friendly these days, but you know, I remember when I first started using my GPS at TBS after we passed all your land nav with a map compass protractor. They let you use GPSs like commercial off the shelf type things, and it's actually kind of confusing at first. I'm like, oh, this actually isn't as easy to use as I thought, and you can get yourself lost too. You just blindly follow where it tells you to go. Well, if you didn't plug in the right GPS coordinate, guess what? You're not going where you think you're gonna go. So, you know, anything to do with your weapons or your fishing poles, um, learn how to cast. Don't don't learn how to cast the first time you see a boil. That's the first time you're casting. And here's another thing: learning how to tie knots really, really well. And I actually only know like 5 or 6 knots, but I know really well because I'll keep some old fishing line in my work backpack, and with downtime on a break or whatever, I'll bust out several different knots or one knot, but many times over. There was a saying in the Marine Corps martial arts program where it's it's better to learn one kick and practice it 1,000 times than 1,000 kicks and practice them one time. Checking my phone. Hold a second. Okay. I think that's kind of cool. I think you get the point. Like if you know how to tie a phenomenal amount of knots, but none of them you know how to tie well, they're probably gonna come undone. So in the Marine Corps doesn't have money. Our budget in the Marine Corps, we like to say, is like the Army's rounding error. But when you deploy overseas, all of a sudden a bunch of money, gear, all this fancy high speed Gucci shit starts falling from the sky, and now you have all this nice gear that's supposed to be easy to use, but you never actually trained with it. I'll give you a super dumb example. So this bipod looking thing on my rifle is we call it a broomstick, and the two legs go up inside the broomstick, and you press a button and it just like the spring loaded, they come down. But what they found was that Marines didn't know how to use something like this, no matter how simple it is. They weren't used to shooting with it when they got overseas because they didn't train with it. And then they started to let you train uh, with things. I'll give you another example in this picture. So the ACOG, the optic on top of my rifle. Remember I was talking about iron sights. So you always have to qualify with iron sights. At entry level training, you qualify with iron sights. But then they give you this fancy high speed scope that you don't know how to use, and then they tell you to go forth and conquer. Well, they started to let Marines qualify on the rifle range with the ACOG because they realized the mistakes of their ways. So no matter how cool Gucci high speed your gear is, always train with it before it matters. Number 6, have the right gear probably the single biggest lesson here is mortgage your house and get the right pair of boots. Because if you don't have the right pair of boots, your life will suck. That's thing number one. Get the right pair of boots. You will never regret having warm, dry feet. When I first started out, you don't have really much money to buy better gear. I remember being at ROTC with these like really crappy boots, and like the rubber on them would like freeze and turn hard. Basically, it's like really cheap, and they made it really hard to walk on ice. It just wasn't the right gear for the right situation. And then, there's different boots for different climates. And one thing that people get surprised about is out of all the stuff that is actually issued to you, you use little of it. You actually buy better gear yourself, like out of your pocket. That's the better gear to use. And there's obviously like a limit to that. You can't like buy your own rifle and bring that overseas, but you get what I'm trying to say. Your gear is going to be subjected to hot, cold, dry, wet conditions, and you have to find stuff that performs well in many environments. So again, excuse me, good boots. And the thing about being wet or cold or whatever, especially if you're hunting, is you'll start to get fidgety. It's really hard to stay still if you're uncomfortable. And we all know, especially if you're deer hunting or turkey hunting, that, you know, that's the first thing those animals are going to see is you moving. And that could be the difference between you being successful and not successful. So here's just a silly picture. This is me at mountain warfare training as a midshipman. So before you go, this is the summer after my sophomore year. You spend there was like a few different cruises. They call them summer cruises you could do. I went to mountain warfare training. It was pretty cool. So this is at like 10,000 feet. And it's also in like June. So excuse me, not in this picture. Well, you can see snow in this picture, but we were like sliding down the hill on snow and stuff. It got really cold at night. I think the base camp of the the Bridgeport base is at about 5,000 feet, and then during like the culminating exercise, you go up to 10,000 feet. And we slept in this like canvas tent. There's probably, I don't know, at least a dozen of us sleeping in that thing. It's like straight up World War II crap, really cold. So um, it was cold nights. And we actually, so in this picture, I have my blouse, we call it, my camo shirt inside out because we were the enemy forces in this little freaking good guys bad guys game we were playing, and then we grew mustaches because that was pretty fun. That's what the cool kids did. And one thing I also learned about was gear accountability. They talk about obviously you can't ever lose your rifle, but man, so you get there and they issue you a whole bunch of gear. It can change depending on what time of year it is. This was the summer, so we got that type of gear, still cold weather stuff. But I remember they gave us these really thick and uncomfortable black leather gloves, and they weren't meant to keep your hands warm. They were meant for you to wear when you were um, adjusting and making uh, concertina wire. Hold on a second. I can do something. No, I'm good. Okay. Um, and I lost one at like the very end. And they were also used for you also use them for like repelling and stuff, so you don't burn the skins off your palms. And I lost one right at the end, and it was me and two other freaking motivated midshipmen that had to go get our lost missing gear statement signed by somebody. Um, and it's one little freaking black glove, and they make a big deal out of it because you lost something. And yeah, so gear accountability is important, but whatever. All right, so number 7, learn from someone that's bigger, stronger, faster, better outdoorsman than you. You're not going to get good at being the smartest guy in the room type of thing. Kind of example in the military is grappling, ground fighting. You're not going to get good at fighting someone that's a lower skill or smaller than you. Find someone bigger that can kick your butt. It's going to stretch you. It's going to take you out of your comfort zone, but that's going to make you better in the long run. So, how does this apply to hunting and fishing? There's so many guys out there that know way more than you and seek out their tutelage. I don't know, buy their books, do something. You just don't try to figure it out on your own. You're gonna waste a lot of time, money, energy, and effort. And if you're like me, you don't have a whole bunch of extra time on your hands to be able to, um, waste it while you're trying to figure things out on your own. There's no reason why you shouldn't be part of a even like a paid subscription or membership to something, whether it's like a hunting thing or a fishing thing. There's just so much information out there, and you'll also see that there are people that are definitely willing to share information. And that was kind of foreign to me growing up. You never quite knew where the fish were biting, and you heard such and such guy caught a fish, and maybe if your dad bought him enough beers at the bar, he'll let you know where he caught his trout. But other than that, you kind of had to figure it out on your own. I don't know what this picture's supposed to represent. I just think it's funny. So this guy has a shirt that says, "When it absolutely positively has to be destroyed overnight, U.S. Marines." So this is on Al Assad, and you can see he has like shin pads on, and that strap that's on the ground, that's supposed to be like the boundary line of the soccer field. Yeah, we played soccer on that ground, that really hard dirt, and it's funny. So these like old Iraqi dudes, they were so good at soccer. They like beat us all the time. The only time we had a chance to like win a game is if we were playing against like another, American team. This guy was funny. I had to get a picture for sure. So I don't know. Maybe playing these knuckleheads made us a better soccer team. Then I remember one time we were playing another team of Marines and we got in a fight, and what happened was like there's a shoving match, and this guy put this guy on my team in a headlock. So I grabbed him, and then the momentum of me jumping on him, they both fell on me, and this is like really hard ground. And man, my sternum, I had to have like cracked it or something because it hurt for so long. It was like a sharp pain, but we didn't really say anything because why we get in fights in the middle of being deployed probably wouldn't go down too well. The CO. All right, so the flip side to that one is share your knowledge. A huge part of being in the military is about leadership and training your subordinates and training people that maybe they're not technically your subordinates, but maybe you know something that they don't and have some sort of skill. Share that knowledge. So again, there's always someone that wants to share something, and at the same time, just remember you don't know everything. You're not ever going to know everything. Um, but what you do know, if share with somebody, because that's the only way that we are going to keep hunting and fishing open for the long term, is if other people are successful. If people go out, they're trying to figure it out on their own, and they're not successful, well, what happens is people lose interest. And then when they start trying to close down fisheries or start trying to close down various hunting areas, if there's no one interested in keeping them open, then they close. And, the next thing you know, we are losing places to hunt and fish for no reason. And so, typically people will do stuff repeatedly over and over and over again if they're good at it. So help them get good at it. And when they're good at it and they do it over and over again, they become a stronger stakeholder in that fishery or that hunting grounds or what have you. So those are eight different things that I think apply to hunting and fishing that I learned in the Marines. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's a little bit entertaining. I could go on, but I won't. And there's probably more things. If you think I'm missing something, please leave a comment below. Let's have a fun discussion. Remember, kill something, drag it back to your cave, and eat it. See ya.